That's a big one, I think. Whoa, 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 baby. Come here.
We've all heard the complaining, we've heard the defenses from both the anglers and the fans, but while everyone is arguing on social media about forward-facing sonar, I decided to look at the actual scoreboard. I analyzed the most recent Elite Series finishes to see if the young anglers labeled as scopers can still catch them, and if we're going to see a big resurgence of old anglers via the coin flip. I created a data set where I can quickly compare overall term results and AOI rankings for scope and non-scope events throughout the whole season. In case you haven't heard, Bassmaster implemented a coin flip so that basically half of the events throughout the season would have front-facing sonar and the others would not. So basically half the events, anglers will have live scope, active target 2, whatever they want, and then on the other ones they won't, and that is all based on angler and fan feedback. So after 2 events, what are the conclusions? I think, to say the least, it's a little bit murky. It'll be hard to draw conclusions from just 2 events. We'll have a small sample size with only 1 event of each style, but I believe the data will define the narrative as the season unfolds. Looking at it early on, we can see that we have a Johnson brother atop the AOI, as well as a young guy that's often labeled as a scoper like Trey McKinney. Overall, there are more older names towards the top of the leaderboard than we had seen at the end of this 2026 season. What you're looking at here on the column to the far left is their 2026 current ranking after 2 events, 1 of each style, versus where they ended up in 2025. Anglers with a blue R next to their name are rookies or first-year qualifiers from the Bass Nation, the Bassmaster Opens. As you can see, there's a lot of anglers that have moved way up and a lot of anglers that have moved way down after 2 events. No hard conclusions, but it isn't as dominated by the younger anglers after 2 events with having a non-scope event at Guntersville. One other interesting conclusion is that only 4 of the 11 first-year anglers are currently above the projected classic cut. And then we've got 2 more, Tristan McCormick and Nick Trim, hovering just outside of the classic cut, with a handful of other anglers way outside the cut needing to make a move, including Russ Lane and Brock Rankenmeyer and Sam Hangy. So we can quickly filter out by event and look at just Guntersville. And in the future, we'll be able to compare and compile all the scope events quickly, where we see that after Guntersville, there clearly was some older names at the top of the list, more experienced anglers, with Trey McKinney really being the one true young angler in the field, right about where he was in the top 10 and in last year. Nick Trim, not a super young guy, Bass Nation rookie, obviously knows how to use electronics. Too early to tell, but I wouldn't define Nick Trim as a scoper. And then you have a couple rookies, Caleb Hudson, Matt Messer. 26, 27 is a really good finish in a 100 angler field of this level of talent. So you've got a smattering of young anglers that did make the top 50 cut. Paul Marks, Evan Kung, anglers like that. Andrew Loberg, Tyler Williams. And then on the flip side, for every one of those anglers, for some of the younger anglers that have fallen further down the list, Easton Fothergill, I really think anything else out of a top 70 is about where I would draw the line as far as like what's a really bad event. And obviously there are some young anglers down there, and there's some old anglers, there's some more established anglers down there. I mean, Tucker Smith, he won a non-scope event in the fall in Guntersville, had a rough event here. Russ Lane is from Alabama, had a rough event. But you also, for every one of those anglers, right, the Brock Rankenmeyer, Sam Hangy, Austin Cranfords, you've got John Cox, Randy Howell, Bill Lowen, Justin Hamner, Jordan Lee, that also had really tough events, that are established anglers that know how to use electronics and not use electronics, still had. So one event is just too hard to look at and draw any real strong conclusions, but we can start to look at trends. If we look at the scope event, Lake Martin by itself, we do see more rookies up high. We do see some of the familiar young anglers up high, but we also see Brock Mosley almost winning this event without using his front-facing sonar that much. He did a little bit on day 3 for sure.
Get in here, yes.
So we do see some of the younger anglers that are better with their electronics towards the top, but we also see, returning angler of the year, Chris Johnson, also struggling there. And down at the bottom, Brian Smith, somebody that's done really well in smallmouth spot bass fisheries, didn't do well here. Russ Lane, who came through the opens. Brock Reinkemeyer, one of the rookies, and typically, you know, we lump a lot of these rookies in as scopers. He didn't have a great event. Austin Felix, Logan Parks from Alabama had a fairly poor event. Sam Hangy went to school in Auburn, just 45 minutes down the road. So a lot of things to look at here, and we'll continue to watch this throughout the season. If these type of breakdowns interest you, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future updated breakdowns like this. And this is potentially going to be critical to pay attention to as you work on your fantasy fishing teams event to end and thinking about which ones are scope and which ones are not scope events. Thinking back to the Guntersville tournament, was it really about the lack of technology, or was it the extreme early cold conditions? You know, as we get more data, we'll be able to unfold that. It seems like early impression that scope does dominate in open water tournaments, while some of the old school tactics and experience help in grass and extreme conditions. The truth is, we definitely need more data, so check back after each pair of events for an updated look. Also, I'd love to hear what type of data, what types of slicing and looking at data you'd like to see, and I'll try to pull that in for the next video. We're definitely going to have age brought in to future videos as another metric that we can filter by. And we'll be weaving some of this information to future fantasy fishing lake breakdowns like we did on Guntersville and Martin. The early verdict as it sits now, while we have a Johnson atop of the Angler year this year, it's a different Johnson, and the AOI standings after two events definitely look a little different than they did at the end of 2026. So that being said, who do I think is going to win Angler of the Year? Is it a scoper, a traditional angler, more of a hybrid? You know, looking at my top 5 picks right now, I'd go Patrick Walters, Trey McKinney, one of the two Johnson brothers, or Easton Fothergill. Love to hear what you guys think based on these numbers. Who is going to be your Angler of the Year pick? If you like statistical data approach like this, and you want to see more of that, but applied to fishing lures instead of scope, non-scope nonsense, check out this video on the screen right here next. The bladed jig were over 50, almost 60% of the total fish weighed across the stage, and then it trickled off from there pretty fast. So